Hey, I'm here with another book review, and today I'll be reviewing the book The Plot Against America by Philip Roth. Oh boy. I hate this book. I hate it with a passion. You'll find out why. Hold on. What is The Plot Against America? When the renowned aviation hero and rabid isolationist Charles A. Lindbergh defeated Franklin Roosevelt by a landslide in the 1940 presidential election, fear invaded every Jewish household in America. Not only had Lindbergh, in a nationwide radio address, publicly blamed the Jews for selfishly pushing America toward a pointless war with Nazi Germany, but, upon taking office as the 33rd President of the United States, he negotiated a cordial understanding with Adolf Hitler, whose conquest of Europe and whose virulent anti-Semitic policies he appeared to accept without difficulty. What followed in America is the historical setting for the startling new book by Pulitzer Prize winner Philip Roth, who recounts what it was like for his Newark family, and for a million such families all over the country, the menacing years of the Lindbergh presidency, when American citizens who happened to be Jews had every reason to expect the worst. Now, after hearing that little intro, you might be expecting something pretty good. But you would be wrong. Basically, what happens in the book is that Charles Lindbergh defeats President Roosevelt in 1940 and becomes the next president, and just what happens because of that. And you'd think that would be pretty interesting, but it just doesn't work. First of all, what I liked about the book, well, the premise is kind of interesting. Well, there's the main character's cousin, Alvin. He's kind of interesting in the beginning. There's Mr. Kakuza, but he doesn't show up until nearly the very end. Screw it, let's go to the things I didn't like. Pretty much everything. First and foremost, the main problem I had with this book is that he's trying to tell two stories at once. He's trying to tell what's happening with his little family, as well as what's happening in the greater political situations because of the president. And I think if he had focused on one of them, it might have actually turned out somewhat good. But since he's always bouncing back and forth between these two stories, neither works out. Another big problem is that timeline? What timeline? There's no timeline. Each chapter has a specific point in time it takes place, but within that time frame, it's all over the place. There are things that happen, then he talks about what happens next, and then goes back to what was happening previously. He starts a chapter months after the previous chapter ended, and then goes back to explain what happened during those months. It's ridiculous. Another problem with it is kind of the same as one of the good things, because the flap sounded so interesting, and it just has such a disappointing payoff. In the beginning, almost nothing happens because of Lindbergh's presidency. Yes, he makes the deal with Hitler, but nothing really comes of it. There are a few programs that are put in place that are clearly anti-Semitic, but nothing truly horrible happens until the end, and then all hell breaks loose. And there's no pacing to it. Another huge problem with this is our narrator. Our narrator is Philip Roth. There's one problem. He's 8. Our narrator is an 8-year-old. What? How did you think this was a good idea? Because he's 8, he can't possibly understand the complexities of the political situation that's happening, so we don't really understand the complexities of what's happening. Hello? Actually, no, I'm wrong. It's not an 8-year-old. It's him looking back on when he was 8. And you'd think that would be better, but he's still treating the situations as he treated them back then, so we don't really get a good understanding of what's happening, because we're seeing it through the eyes of an 8-year-old. Another big problem with the book is that it doesn't really have character progression, it has character regression. Let me explain. I mentioned Alvin when I was talking about the things I liked about the book, and he starts off as a really cool character. Alvin is Philip's cousin, and he was really making a mess of his life, and Philip's parents take him in and teach him how to be a respectable, honest person, and he does. He becomes a respectable, honest person, and he's a great character. This all happens before the book starts, by the way. Once the book starts, Alvin is this respectable person who is really a good role model and a person to look up to, and I really liked his character in the beginning of the book. Then, and because America isn't going to war with Germany, Alvin goes to Canada to enter the war effort, and he loses his leg. Because of that, he is forced to come home, and he does not take losing his leg well. And he starts to get a little bit better once he deals with the fact that he's lost his leg and starts to use his artificial leg better. Then he goes right back into what he was doing before Philip's parents took him in. And it's like, why? Why would you ruin such a good character this way? And he never gets any better again. He goes back into those bad habits, and he stays in them for the rest of the book. And the final thing, the last nail in the coffin, the cardinal sin of bookmaking, it's just boring. It was one of the most boring books I have ever read in my life. Usually, it takes me anywhere between like 2 to 3 days to a week to read a book, determining on how much I like the book, how much time I have, various factors. This book took me months to read, because I just dreaded reading it. I would do anything but read this book because it was so boring. And I can forgive a lot. I can forgive so much as long as your book is interesting. And Philip, you failed. That's my review for this book. It gets 1 star. Stay away. See ya.